Hello everyone, today on Scottish Memories I am chatting to Tom Urie. How are you all? Hope you are all happy and healthy and safe and well out there. It's nice to see you. Just before we get started, if you haven't already, please remember to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and why don't you check out all the playlist of all the other Scottish Memories, because honestly, I have chatted to some incredible people. If you haven't watched them, you're generally missing out on some good chat. But today, I am chatting to Tom Urie. Actor, musician and DJ, he is best known for his role as Big Bob in Scottish soap opera River City. However, he has appeared in some of the most iconic Scottish TV programmes, including Chewin the Fat, Still Game, The Karen Dunbar Show, as well as appearing in Burke and Hare with Simon Pegg and Andy Serkin, and Trainspotting 2. And if you haven't checked out his YouTube channel where he does a solo version of Bohemian Rhapsody, then trust me, you are genuinely missing out. Tom, hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? What's happening?
No, not much. Right now, nothing's happening. Apart from the fact that me and my wife have got a 3.5-week-old baby in the house.
Wow. So what's happening then?
Yeah, but it's all happening in the house.
Right. Well, I mean, what better a time for there to be a worldwide pandemic? You know,
I know.
You can just spend loads of time with a wean.
I know. To tell you the truth, we were about to announce that my wife was pregnant, literally as we all went into lockdown in March.
Uh-huh.
So virtually the whole of the pregnancy, I generally got to just stay home and look after her, which no one really gets to do. You know what I mean? So that was at least something nice came out of it there. And now I'm still getting to stay in help.
Was she not chucking you out the house?
No.
Because I know that my cats, the most traumatic thing that's happened in my house is that my cats freaked out at the fact that I was in all the time. Why are you not going out every day? Why are you in our house? Normally we've got the place to ourselves. So they've had 8 months of me in their house, and they're furious.
So we've kind of got the opposite. We've got 2 dogs, and now they're way too used to us being here all the time.
Okay.
So whenever we just try to go to the shops or anything, they're like, no, you live here now. You're always here now.
That's the thing I'm worried about. I've got really, really used to doing nothing.
Yeah.
I've got really used to it. So I've got really used to getting up when I feel like it, watching Scooby-Doo, chilling out, kind of like wearing joggies. I don't know what's going to happen when I may have to put a jacket on again.
I know.
I'm out a few weeks ago, went out in my car, and I'd forgotten how to drive.
My wife's she's terrified about getting. She hasn't drove for since the beginning of all this.
I forgot how the stereo worked, and I forgot what side the petrol. It seems like decades ago.
Yeah.
Since we were out in the world, it's just really weirdest time.
I know. My wife's been kind of jealous of me because when it was really serious, obviously I was the only one going out to do the shopping because she was pregnant, and we just didn't know how catching it would affect a pregnant lady. And I was also helping 2 of my best friends because they were shielding. So I was going out and doing their shopping, I was doing our shopping, and I was doing my parents' shopping because they're in their 70s as well. So I was in and out all the time, and she's sitting there going, is it nice outside? Are the people still happy?
Uh-huh.
So she's been locked indoors most of the time, and I'm like, yeah, it's lovely. There's no one there. It's great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when we first locked down, it was kind of like spring, and the air was clear, and the birds were singing, but this time it's like, what's going to happen next?
I know.
So I think that's what everybody's feeling at the moment. Everybody's just a little bit, and everybody's obsessed with what's going to happen at Christmas now. And of course, nobody's got an answer.
No.
So, I mean, I'm quite happy to just sit in here with a Frey Bentos and just that's Christmas.
Well, I mean, for us, like I said, we've got a wee one. It'll be no different than any other day. It'll be us tired, essentially.
Yeah. Imagine, yeah.
I'll jump right in if that's okay. You're a Paisley lad.
Yes. I left Paisley when I was 19, but I still feel as if Paisley's my home. every time I go back there, I just feel as if I've got back into a warm bath. You know, I just feel safe. And I just kind of, you know, you're likely to bump into somebody that knew your gran. Or, you know, I just love all that stuff. And I love the history. I love the fact that at every corner there's a story, there's an experience that I had, and a place that I was steaming, and you know, I've still got friends and family there. So Paisley really for me is I mean, I talk about being a Glaswegian because I've kind of become a Glaswegian now, but I'm at heart, I would live in Paisley again like a shot. I really would. I love Paisley. I love the culture and the history and the artistry that exists in Paisley, which I think they're only beginning to embrace just in the past 20, 30 years. Really, because I didn't know who Tannahill was when I was growing up. I knew who Jerry Rafferty was, but now you've got there's the kind of the witch history, which is Paisley's becoming a bit witchy now.
I don't know the witch history of Paisley.
Listen, Paisley, there's legends about witch trials and witch burnings. There's a crossroads in Paisley with a horseshoe, which is embedded in the concrete. And that is to represent where the witches were burned.
Right.
And it's said in legend that if anybody removes that horseshoe, tragedy will befall Paisley. So, no, as far as I know, it's still there.
Right.
I don't think anybody dares move it.
Because I was going to say, I'm sure there'll be some wido out there drunk one night going.
You're brought up with this kind of legend in Paisley that you don't touch the horseshoe. Right. You know, you'll end up in a big wicker man.
I can just imagine.
Paisley over the past few years is they've embraced it, and they've now got the Halloween festival, which of course this year, man, you know, the Halloween festival with like witches, that they've got drone witches that fly about, and they really go to town with it. It's become a really exciting time. And of course Paisley was up for the 2021 City of Culture, and God, imagine actually if they'd got it now, I mean, they wouldn't have been able to do anything.
It's funny because I remember when Glasgow got the City of Culture. I mean, that was early 90s?
1990, I think it was.
Yeah. Like, I mean, obviously I'm an Edinburgh boy, but I remember that being huge. Like, for that year, that's all you heard, Glasgow City of Culture.
Yeah. Oh, we're culture. We're cultural, by the way. I mean, and I had left Glasgow. I was in Perth at that point, so I didn't really. The only things I did in the Year of Culture was I came down for the big day, which was the big concert which people still talk about, mainly because Sheena Easton got bottled. I was there. She came out and said hello, Glasgow.
Oh,
everybody
well,
just
and fairness.
Oh, really? Oh, really? You're from Bellshill.
In fairness, you know, it's funny. I remember there was a tea in the park where I think it was Eminem was definitely one of them, and possibly the Black Eyed Peas or the other. They both came on stage. Obviously, one of them had flown into Edinburgh, one of them had flown into Glasgow, and they'd been driven, you know, to tea in the park. So both of them only had where they'd flew in their head. One of them came out and said, "Hello, Edinburgh," and the whole crowd went, "Oh!" And then the other ones came out and said, "Hello, Glasgow," and the crowd once again went, "Oh, come on!"
It's so strange, isn't it, the Glasgow Edinburgh thing? And it all comes down to salt and sauce. That's what it comes down to. That's the resentment. That's the big sticking point.
It's funny. I don't know if you remember this. There was a thing a little while ago where they got Edinburgh cabbies to go work in Glasgow, and they got Glasgow cabbies to come work in Edinburgh, so that the two of them could start to learn a little bit about each city and start to sell it when they're back home, rather than going, "Oh, don't go to Glasgow. Don't go. Stay in Edinburgh. It's lovely."
There's two cities that are 40 minutes away from each other.
I know.
They're so different.
Yeah,
So
but in brilliant ways. Though. I mean, I'm maybe a weird Edinburgh boy, but I love I love Glasgow, because when I was acting, I was always through there for auditions. So, you know, I was there all the time and I got to know it and it was lovely. So that I'm maybe part of the smaller Edinburgh crowd that loves Glasgow, but Glasgow has got a humour. The Glaswegians have got a humour that Edinburgh just doesn't have, really.
Edinburgh's got a very different humour, though. Edinburgh does definitely have a very clever sense of humour, whereas I think Glasgow's more a party sense of humour. I don't know. Edinburgh's the home of comedy, basically. You know, it's the biggest comedy festival in the world, the biggest arts and cultural festival in the world. But then when you come through to Glasgow, you'll get somebody as funny as Billy Connolly at the bus stop.
Yeah.
It's a grand. The grands are funny. I don't know what makes it like that, but it just seems to be that way. But I think maybe, I don't know, everybody of my generation anyway was brought up with Billy Connolly albums in the house, and we just were brought up with this funny, and I don't know about anybody else's family, but and what it was like over in Edinburgh, but I was surrounded by all these really funny aunties and neighbours, and they were all hysterical. They all had these great stories. I used to love when my mum had a sewing bee, and it would be like, they didn't do any sewing, they just get drunk. I always knew there was a sewing bee because my mum bought Porsche crisps out of Marks and Spencer's, and they would come round, and I used to sit outside the door and just listen to the stories, and they were brilliant.
Yeah.
And it's the kind of thing that Janie Godley talks about now, you know, Big Isa McNamee with the soup pot, and just all these legendary, powerful, strong women that had to fight to bring their kids up.
Yeah.
And I was kind of surrounded by that growing up. I was surrounded by, I had a really funny auntie called Aunt Bet who lived in Halifax for some reason. And she had this Glasgow Halifax accent. And she used to turn up about 3 times a year, and she always had £1. And she'd put it in your hand and she'd go, "Don't tell your mum."
and just imagine your mum go around, £1? She gave you £1?
I know, but I mean, it was opposite that, and she was called Bet. And she was going to marry a guy called Johnny Davis just so she could be called Bet Davis. She didn't even like him. She was going to marry him just so she could be called Bet Davis. She was good. She was kind of this glorious, funny woman with a big smoker's laugh, a big kind of chesty cackle.
Yeah. And
she used to turn up about 2-3 times a year, and she worked in the Roundtrees factory. So she used to come up with bags and bags of like rejected Smarties and Kit Kats, and
nice.
She was just like this amazing, mad, smoky Santa woman that used to arrive and be full of stories and anecdotes. And my mother loved her, you know, and we all loved her too. And I just remember these women. I remember these strong, funny women.
Yeah, it's kind of a generation that we don't really have anymore. That sort of working, you know, proper brought up working generation.
I just think we don't see them anymore because nobody's outside now. You know, nobody. I remember when I was growing up, you knew all the neighbours, and it was never Jenny. It was always Mrs. Wilson. You know, it was you had, and everybody was kind of in each other's. You know, the people that was taking a turn of cleaning the stairs, and there was all that. You know, my childhood smelled of Vim because we lived in a upper close, so there was, and it was immaculate. You could eat your dinner off the close. But we knew all the neighbours, and there was the man upstairs that liked a drink, and then there was the wee old woman that lived up the stairs and across, who was my best mate when I was a kid. I used to call her Gran Niven, and she was a medium, and she used to talk about the dead neighbours that came to visit. Oh man, and just this and this population of characters that were in my childhood, and my next door neighbour was Gerard Butler as well.
Oh well, there you go.
I know, through the wall. So it was just a kind of it was an A-list cast in my childhood in that street in Paisley.
But I know what you mean. I was the same in my sort of area, the wee sort of cul-de-sac that I grew up. my mum and dad still live there now, and there's not as many kids randomly there now. Or like you said, they're just not out playing in the streets anymore like we used to. But we were always out on that street, always out. But then there was less cars as well, I suppose. But you could not stop us.
It just was a different time. You went out in summer holidays. You went out in the morning, and you'd end up having lunch at one of your pals' houses. And your mother, your pal's mum would. And it just kind of was. There was no school runs. You didn't get driven to school.
No.
And there was no snow days. If it snowed, you walked through it to school. I'm sounding like an old man now, but
I agree. I completely agree.
And there was no play dates. There was no soft play centres. There was no, there was no kind of scheduled what the kids are doing every weekend.
Yeah.
But we just went out and played at Star Wars.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't know, I'm not saying that it's better back then, because kids are a hell of a lot safer now. And also, I would have killed for an iPad when I was a kid.
Absolutely. There is stuff now coming out that I'm just like, God, if I was a kid, I would have loved that.
But I get very nostalgic about my childhood. I get very nostalgic about all the characters. There was a woman. Oh my God, cats are having World War III. There was a woman. We used to call her Mrs. Wifey. And she'd come to the door, and she had a wee dog. And we were in Gallowhill in Paisley, and my mother was wanting to move across the railway to Whitehall, which was a bit posher. It was still council houses, but they were a bit posher. And Mrs. Wifey was this wee woman that knew everybody's business.
And there's always one.
And she used to walk round Whitehall, and she would know who's dead. She would know who was dead. And she used to come and chat at the door, and I'd answer the door, and I'd say, Mum, Mrs. Wifey's at the door. I'd in front of her. She never bothered. Mum, that's Mrs. Wifey. And she'd go, hello, Mrs. Hare. That's Mrs. Mardeed. That's the house free. Get it in. And that's how we ended up moving house, because we found out somebody was dead, and my mother, I don't know what happened. But we moved across the railway track, and my mother's accent changed overnight. She became, hello, yes. Nice.
It's like all of a sudden having your phone voice all the time.
Well, my mother had an American phone voice, because in the 1950s she moved to Detroit, and she was a telephonist.
All right.
3 years in Detroit. So every time she went on the phone, she had an American accent. And my pals used to say, I phoned your house last night, and an American woman answered. I went, no, it's my mother. I went, no, it's an American woman. I went, I know. It's my mum. Because she was American, everything. She was like, yeah, okay.
Yeah. So growing up, did you get a chance to explore Scotland a lot on holidays and things, or like staycations mostly?
Not really. We my dad worked for British Airways. He was a loading supervisor.
All right.
So we used to get either free or cheap flights, and we could have gone anywhere in the world for, I think you paid 20% of the flight, or you got it free. It was one free flight a year for your family, something like that.
Right.
And we could have gone anywhere in the world, but every single year we went to Jersey. My mother didn't like anywhere else. We just went to Jersey every year. So the holidays were always in Jersey, but I do remember going up to to St Andrews quite a lot.
Right.
As a kid. That was see, if we were doing a big day out, it was St Andrews. If it was a wee day out, it was Largs.
Right.
The kind of West Coast Riviera.
Yeah.
Which has got palm trees. And then there's Cumbria, the island, which has got Millport, which we used to go, and at Easter, we used to always go to Millport, but the fathers never came to Millport. It was a thing where it was always the women and their kids went to Millport, but the fathers all stayed at home. And I don't know why that was, but it was wonderful. It was a real freedom. You would hire a bike for the week, and you just had freedom. There was very little cars, so you just got to cycle around this island, and they had a joke shop, and they always had things happening for the kids. But because you went across the sea to it, it felt like you were going to America.
Right.
And it had fairy lights. Just thinking that America was Millport. And we stayed above, I don't know how many times we stayed above this place, but we stayed above this cafe called Kame's Cafe, and the guy that ran it was called Ferdy. And he was this very handsome Italian man that I think all the mothers fancied, you know. They were always never out of Ferdy's restaurant. But Ferdy had a jukebox. And I've always been obsessed with music since I was a tiny little boy. And in the house at home, I had an old record player that my mum's boss had given me. And it was a knackered old thing. It was one of these old knackered record players. And I had about 5 or 6 singles that I played constantly over and over and over again. So, of course, when we went on holiday, I had my record player. I was devastated. But Ferdy used to let me play the jukebox. So I would happily just stand at the jukebox all day. So my mother would go, just dump me in Ferdy's, and Ferdy would watch me, and and Ferdy used to let me play the jukebox for nothing. I don't know, he had a code or something, and I used to just stand there fascinated and watch the records coming over and go down. And
it was properly one of the old ones where it would pick the record up and move it. And
we'd press the buttons to choose the song, and it would go ka-chung, down, the needle would go over, and it was the most exciting thing in the world. And then the record would come on, and I would just stand there and listen to it. And I remember listening to the Bay City Rollers and Seasons in the Sun by Terry Jacks, and the Stylistics and all that. It was like 1973, 1974, so it was all that stuff. And it was just incredible memories. And I've always wanted a jukebox.
Yeah.
And it was one of my adult things now. I'm going, do you know, there's so much magic attached to one of these old 7-inch single jukeboxes. I would love to have one in the house. And I've got pals that always keep an eye open for one for me, just in case. And there's been a couple that have come up, but they've always arrived when I've been skint. And I've like, I need to pay my rent. I can't buy a jukebox. So if I win the lottery, I'll go and get an old 1960s or 70s jukebox. That was my real... That's my earliest memory, I think, is Ferdy's jukebox in Millport. And it's a shame, Ferdy passed away a couple of years ago, and the cafe's now a house. Somebody bought it and made it a flat.
Right.
That was the holy grail for me.
Yeah.
That place, it really was.
It's funny because I'm kind of fascinated by stuff like that. You see it a lot in Edinburgh and round about streets that were obviously streets with shops. And they've all been kind of changed to houses, you know what I mean? And you can tell because the front of it doesn't look quite right, you know what I mean? Because it used to be obviously a big window, and it's kind of got different brick. It just takes it away. It just takes the character of the whole place away.
Shouldn't be allowed.
No, properly showing her age here. Properly showing. But I know what you mean about obviously nowadays, and properly showing her age, and not really a Scottish memory, but. Obviously, we're all downloads of music and streaming and everything like that. But see, when I was a kid, my record player in my room and getting the vinyls and putting them on, it was... I loved it. And yeah, okay, when CDs came out, I thought they were amazing.
Yeah.
But now, I don't have a vinyl that I would love. Just because, you see, even trying to find the song. Remember when you just had to pick up the needle? And you could see you could see the difference on it between songs.
I have got a massive vinyl collection.
Right.
I mean, this whole room is there's a whole wall over there that is albums. And it's not all stuff that I collected over the years. It's because when the CDs came out, everybody threw their records out. You just thought, CDs are amazing.
Yeah.
And they were gone, but round about 10 years ago, I started getting really obsessed. I think the world became obsessed with vinyl again about 10 years ago. So I went round charity shops and bought everything back again.
Yeah.
Second-hand shops. So I've now got my entire record collection back plus loads more because I got obsessed with it. And I used to really clean them up, and I would order new white paper sleeves from Amazon and restore them all. So now, and they're all alphabetical. It's probably the only organised thing in my life is my record collection. But it's my pride and joy, and I've got a really good record player now. It's not a jukebox, but it's one of my real passions and my real luxuries is to have a good record player and all this old vinyl that I love, and I prefer listening to an album now rather than an MP3, because I think you've earned it. If you've got to take it out the sleeve and put it on, put the needle on, you've earned listening to it, and you can read the sleeve. Whereas if you ask, I don't want to say the name because it will start.
Yeah, everyone's will go off when they're watching.
Ones go off when they're watching. I know. It's like any time anybody mentions it in the telly, and I think Cartman did it in South Park once, and everybody ended up getting soap powder delivered. You the code.
It seems to be one of the things that comedians are doing on TV things now as well, especially if you're watching like Britain's Got Talent. They'll put it in saying, "Oh, I think whatever her name is, Machine, remember to vote for."
Yeah. Okay, they're controlling us, aren't they? They're controlling us.
With that sort of thing, we kind of started to talk about the Glasgow humour and the Edinburgh humour and things, and you've appeared in like some of the proper classic Scottish modern day comedies, Chewin the Fat and Still Game and things like that. There's something special about Scottish humour that does translate, which is surprising considering our accent some of the time, but there is something special about the Scottish humour, isn't there?
There definitely is, especially with the expats. So if you get people living overseas that immediately miss Scotland, Still Game is perfect for them because it's their grandpa or their dad.
Yeah.
And I think that with Still Game especially, you could set it in Montreal or you could set it in Brisbane because it's the same characters. Everybody's got these. It's not essentially just a Scottish thing. These people. Everybody knows an Isa. Everybody knows a Tam and a Winston.
Yeah.
But that the humour is very Scottish, and I think it's based on the Connolly stuff. It's based right back to the kind of Chick Murray, that whole these funny aunties at the steamy, that whole thing. Kind of that's where Ford and Greg get all that. It's based on their funny uncles.
Yeah,
Jack and Victor are based on their real life uncles, or somebody's dad. I think it might be Ford's dad is Jack, and Victor is Greg's uncle, somebody. But it's based on these funny old guys. And it does, and it came from Chewin the Fat, and Chewin the Fat was kind of like it came from nowhere, really, because there had been Rapsy Nesbitt and there had been Scotch and Rye. It's sort of carried on from Scotch and Rye because Scotch and Rye was such a staple of Hogmanay.
Scotch and Rye, to this day, on New Year's Eve, on Hogmanay, I still enjoy looking up old Scotch and Rye sketches on YouTube, just for the nostalgia of it all.
Just for the nostalgia. If you watch it now, the sketches are really long. It's not stood the test of time for today's audiences, I don't think.
Yeah, my wife's a little bit younger, and she missed it when it was on TV. And a few years ago, I tried to get her to sit and watch it, and she was like, "What is this?" I'm like, "This is classic."
Yeah, I know. But just things like obviously the minister when he got drunk, and there's just things that stay with you, and it became as legendary as Connolly's routines, like the crucifixion and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And Still Game has now embedded itself into that legendary Scottish, because people that the way we talk really fondly about Billy Connolly, when the kids now are my age, they'll be really, really fondly talking about Still Game because kids love it. I know they're not meant to watch it, but we weren't meant to listen to Billy Connolly, but we did.
Yeah.
And we were allowed to.
I was, this is all kind of tying together, but I remember having the Billy Connolly solo album vinyl.
Yeah.
And I used to play that over and over and over in my room. And my mum said all she could hear was just me giggling constantly.
Yeah, there was the Jobby Weeker.
Yeah.
And the crucifixion.
Yeah, Mary's wedding.
Mary's wedding. It was just, and everybody knew it word for word, but you listened to it constantly. And it was a multi-generational thing. Everybody loved it. Everybody loved Billy Connolly. And I got to meet him a couple of years ago. I got to meet him. And I was so kind of, I was so self-conscious about it because it was just me and him in a room. It was downstairs at Oranmore, and I was there, and Billy Connolly was there, and he was just kind of standing on his own. And I went, I'm going to have to speak to him. I can't not speak to Billy Connolly. And I went up and I shook his hand and I went, hi, I'm Tom. And he went, Billy. And I went, oh, man. And I got my picture taken with him because I was like, oh no, I can't believe I'm asking for a picture with Billy. But I thought, I'm going to regret it if I don't.
I would have done exactly the same.
And then about 3 weeks later, I was walking through Royal Exchange Square and they came walking towards me and he went, oh, hello there, how are you? And I went, he remembered me. Or maybe he just said hello to everybody that walked past him, but it just was like, oh my God.
But it is like Scottish royalty, a little bit.
It is like Scottish royalty, but there's a thing with him. He's got an aura. If you meet him, there's a thing about Billy Connolly. There's this kind of, I can't describe it. There's this real vibration from him, this real kind of ledge. It's like meeting a ghost. I don't know if it make any sense, but it is like meeting somebody that is like, I was more excited meeting Billy Connolly than I've ever been about meeting anybody ever in my life.
Yeah.
Anybody. Even if I met Paul McCartney or Brian Wilson or any of my heroes, I don't think it would have felt the same as meeting Connolly because it was just a from birth thing.
Yeah.
It just was this thing that made everybody happy.
Yeah, no, I completely. We got to see him live the last tour he did, and it's the only time I've seen him live at the Usher Hall here in Edinburgh. And I'm so over the moon that I've got to see him perform live just once because it's one of those things that you just, I think, as a Scots person, you just want to have seen him live just once.
Oh, I've never seen him, never got to do it, but I got to shake his hand. So that'll do me.
Yeah, I think that wins, to tell you the truth. I think that wins. Yeah. Kind of on music as well, though. Obviously, I mean, I have to say, I've been watching your videos you've been putting out, your solo videos. They're spectacular, by the way. They are brilliant.
Thank you.
Is there a lot? Do you enjoy a lot of Scottish music, or so you've done a bit of ELO and you've done a bit of Queen in there as well? But is there a lot of Scottish artists you like, or?
I'm just worried about doing one in case, because I know most of them, so I'm worried about doing one in case I'm crap at it and they get upset. So, I did a song last year that I might do again, but I might have to ask the guy. It's Gary Clark from Danny Wilson.
Yeah.
Did a song called We Sail on Stormy Water, and I absolutely love it. And I've done that, but I don't want to put it up because he's my Facebook pal, and I've met him times and I kind of know him and I know his brother, and I feel a bit too self-conscious about it. I might message him and say, can I do this? And if he goes, it's a bit awkward, I'll go, right, okay, fine. And then I thought about doing a Deacon Blue one, but I know Lorraine and Ricky really well as well, so I'm like, it's like, I don't know about that. But I mean, the Scottish music, I've worked with a lot of them. And it's always every week I try to do a song a week, and it takes me a long time to do them, but the reason why I do them is because it keeps me occupied, because I struggle a lot with anxiety and depression,
right?
And I've found that the best way to deal with that is to be really busy and concentrate, and music is my thing. So just a few months ago, when I started to get a little bit kind of, I'm beginning to freak out a bit, I just started singing my favourite songs and then multi-tracking them and then trying to recreate them and figure out what the bass line was and figure out the harmonies. Like Bohemian Rhapsody, I listened to it for 2 weeks, figuring out what everything was.
Right.
And then I started piecing it together myself, and it was like doing a big giant jigsaw. And it was, because everybody, remember at the start of the lockdown, everybody was jigsaw daft.
Yeah.
So I was doing these musical jigsaws of recreating all these parts, and then once I'd finished, I thought, I'll put it up on Facebook and see what happens. And Bohemian Rhapsody went mad. It went really viral, and then Brian May shared it on his webpage. The Brian May official website shared it. Of course, that was too overwhelming for me, and I had to take to my bed for 2 days. No. And then it's just become a thing now. So it's now every week I'm trying to put a new song up. This week was Sowing the Seeds of Love. Last week was Mr. Blue Sky.
I saw that with I saw Cat and Ewan had done a nice wee intro for it as well. Yeah,
bless them. And next week, I'm thinking about doing a Beatles song because the Beatles are my big thing, and I'm just trying to decide what one to do. But I've got it in my head that I want to do War of the Worlds.
Okay. Well, like the full album?
Well, a sort of 10-minute version, I think.
You know what? I've got my wife laughs at me about this, but I remember listening to War of the Worlds for the first time when I was a kid. And it's just, you know how you have these little flashes of memories, a vivid flash of memory. And just that one bit where the chances of anything coming to Earth are 1,000,000 to 1, they said. That bit there, and yet they come. Scared the living crap out of me as a kid. Properly. And it's still I can, even like hearing it now in my head, I can still remember that feeling as a kid going, oh no.
Well, I mean, 2020's got a kind of War of the Worlds vibe about it, I think.
Oh, a little bit.
I think the time is now for a 10-minute condensed version of a one-man War of the Worlds.
Oh, yeah.
No one believed. Do the whole bit.
That would be cool. It would be very, very cool. So when you play, do you get to play when you're doing your music or when you're acting, traveling around Scotland? Have you got favourite places to go in Scotland?
Dundee is a big favourite place for me. Just over the past few years, especially, I had kind of helped put together this performance venue in Dundee called Duck Slattery's. Which has got a big, it used to be Fat Sam's Live, and it's got a big stage and a huge sound system and a great lighting rig. And we get to put on shows every week. Well, we did before this.
Yeah.
And that became a big part of my week. We had big video screens, and it, rather than just DJing, there was a lot of interaction, a lot of with dancers, with a lot of variety stuff, a lot of live music. And it really took off, and it was really doing well. And it's sitting there waiting for us to go back. It's sitting there waiting for this virus to disappear.
Yeah.
But also, I've done Panto in Dundee for the past 3 years as well. So Dundee's become a real second home for me. The city has, and I now feel very comfortable when I go through there because I know people in shops, and I know people, and I know areas, and I know Broughty Ferry, very nice. So I've got to get really, really fond of Dundee, and it's quite Glasgow-y, Dundee. They've got the same kind of humour, and there's a great music scene in Dundee, a great musical history. It's where the Associates came from, Billy Mackenzie, and they've got Gary Clark and Danny Wilson and all, and it's just it's awful what's happening with live music in Scotland at the moment, because Dundee had a really vibrant live music scene. There was Clark's, the bar Clark's was incredible for gigs, and it's just closed down now permanently, and it was a really fantastic gig venue. Our place is sitting closed, but we will open again when it comes back. But it's just sad to see the Scottish music scene. It's had to go online, I suppose.
Yeah, it's even before all this stuff going on, this crazy time we're going through right now. It was happening here in Edinburgh. We have lost over the past few years so many live music venues, and they're just being shut and shut and shut. And it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to see them all close down.
A lot of it is because people will buy a fancy flat in the town centre and then object to noise. And you're like, why in the name of God did you buy a flat above a live music venue and then get the live music venue closed down?
Yeah.
Stop it. So Dundee still had a throbbing, if you pardon the expression, music scene. And it will have again. I'm sure live music's going to come back. It's just it's just a worry at the moment because no musicians are working. No musicians have worked for months, and some actors are lucky if they're doing telly stuff, but the rest, the fact that Pantos aren't happening this year is devastating, not just for actors, but for stage crew, for people that work in theatres, for the theatres themselves, because the majority of their income for the year comes from pantos.
Yeah. It's funny that during the course of these interviews, I've chatted to a lot of people, Scottish actors who perform in pantos, Grant Stott, Alan Stewart, Andy Gray, Ian Sheepy Smith, all of them pantos in Scotland all over the time. And when I started doing these, Grant and Alan were like, yeah, hopefully we'll be back up and running for Christmas. And then by the time I hit Andy and Sheepy, it was like, yeah, they're gone. They're gone. It's heartbreaking, because you're right. It's theatres across the country. That is the bread and butter. That's what keeps them going, and it's heartbreaking that we're just.
It is, and it's also a lot of children's first experience of live theatre.
Yeah.
As well, panto. I have to be honest with you, and I'm quite vocal about this. I can't bear it. I can't.
You've done it for the past 3 years.
Anybody that has done panto with me will explain to you how grumpy I am. I've done panto with Grant and Alan, they'll tell you. It's not for me. It's not for me. But the past 3 years in Dundee have been a really good experience, because it was a shorter run.
Right.
And I kind of made sure I was staying somewhere nice, and it was fine.
But it's hard graft. I've done 2 pantos in my younger age. I did Aladdin, I did Peter Pan, and it's 2 or 3 shows a day, every day for like 3-4 weeks. It's hard graft. 3
or 4 weeks is fine, but the big ones like Alan and Grant's one, it starts at the end of November and you're still there. The one I did with them, I was still sitting there in the 3rd week of January.
Yeah. And I swear that's shorter than it used to be. I swear when I was a kid it used to go on to like March. February, yeah.
They used to run till March, the pantos. Because Una McLean, that played my mum in River City, I grew up watching her in panto.
Yeah.
And she used to say to me, the pantos used to run till April in Glasgow. It just kept them going.
Yeah, I swear I remember that.
It still runs quite late. It still runs quite late into January, but it's because it's a great show. And the boys at the Kings in Edinburgh, they're the experts.
They've got it down pat now, haven't they? They've really got it down pat.
The 3 boys, and they've got Jordan now with them as well. They've just got it working. It works incredibly well. And I was lucky enough to do panto in Glasgow with Gerard Kelly as well. And he was a powerhouse for it. He just was it was kind of, there was times when you were like that, I need to get out of here. But he just was, and they came from, Alan and Kelly and that, they all came from that hard-working, and Una McLean had to elbow her way through all these strong male showbiz monsters, a lot of them, back in the day. They really had to fight for every line. But the boys at the Kings in Edinburgh have got it. They're the kind of experts at it. And then you've got Elaine and Johnny at the Kings in Glasgow, and it just works so well, and people absolutely love it. And I don't know what it's going to be like this year. It's one of the biggest tragedies of this year for our industry is the fact that that's not going to happen. And of course, there's a few people doing it online, and that's brilliant, but it's not the same as going and sitting there in the audience and wondering what's going to happen next. I do panto with, over the past 3 years, my panto buddy is Darren Connell from Scot Squad, who is the funniest human being that's ever been put on God's earth. And I swear to God, right? And no 2 shows are the same. So every single show, I was excited about doing the show because I didn't know what he was going to do. This was wonderful. And there was one show last year where the sound system stopped working, and the theatre were going, and the kids were all sitting in it. And me and Darren and Chris, who was in the show as well, just went out front and we just did banter with the kids in the audience. I was in full Dame outfit. Darren was sitting on a dad's knee crying, going, the panto's broke. It's the thing about panto is that you just don't know what's going to happen next, and I think that's what's such a Scottish thing. Scottish pantos are very different from English pantos.
Oh yeah. Oh, they really are.
I went down to see a mate in a panto in England, and it was like, really, it's like a nursery rhyme on stage, and it's all nice, and it's all the kids, and some of the pantos up here are filthy.
Yeah, yeah, they are.
Not in a bad way, in a kind of Billy Connolly, you're allowed to laugh at it way.
Yeah, yeah. And here's jokes that the kid will understand. Here's jokes that the parents will understand that will go way over their head.
That's just over the kids' heads. The kids aren't getting it. The parents aren't getting annoyed about you being, but it's a big family show, and it's going to be the thing this Christmas that people are going to really miss.
Yeah.
And of course, so many people in this industry work. And the pantos start prepping in March.
Yeah.
And this year, I mean, I would be working on the music because I do the panto in Dundee as well. So I would be up to my eyes and working on the music for the panto. And this year, it just feels a little bit. It just feels as if we're on pause. And
Yeah, it's an odd time, isn't it? It's a bizarre time.
I hope it comes back. And if it can't come back in the same way, we'll figure something out.
Yeah.
Figure it
I
out.
mean, me and my wife were saying this. Like, obviously, we hope that a vaccine comes along, or either a vaccine, or they just learn how to treat it. One of the two. I'll take one. I'll take either one.
Well, I think it's going to be a combination of the both of them. I think there's maybe going to be a vaccine that we have to have every couple of months, or I don't know, but it will sort itself out. But the problem is that these companies and these theatres are going to go under.
Yeah.
So
it's one of these things that people aren't going to realise how much they miss it.
I know.
Till there isn't an option to have it at all.
And there's a real, the whole attitude from, I don't want to get political, but the whole attitude from centralised governments tends to be, it seems to be like, oh, well, we'll worry about the entertainment once this is all over. But in the meantime, everybody that works in that industry, and it's event planners, it's the supply chain for these industries, the road crew and the backstage staff, they're all, where are they going to be when it starts up again? They'll all have had to go and get another job, and then the expertise isn't going to be there to do these big. It's going to be really. They're going to have to invest in it heavily. They're going to have to keep an eye on this because there's going to be nothing there. There's going to be no theatres to go back to. And
when you're talking about building up an economy, I know we're kind of going off subject here, but when you're talking about building up an economy, theatres bring in more money to the British economy than football.
No.
And it's like, this is what's going to help you build it back up because people are going to want to get together as much as possible.
I just think, I've got this fantasy in my head that when it's all over, there'll be almost like War of the Worlds when the aliens suddenly get tuberculosis and die, and everybody's like that. Yes, just this. I think people are really going to embrace performance and live music and live theatre.
I hope so,
because it is that thing of you don't know what you've got till it's gone. I think people are just going to absolutely. I mean, there's so many things now that I think I can't believe I was taking that for granted. I think I'm going to appreciate everything in life more when we're allowed back to normal. But I think that gigs are going to be mobbed, the theatres are going to be sold out, and I think people are going to just burst out there and go, entertain us, come on, we've been sitting watching Tiger King for a year. Please give us something, and I think that I'm just imagining being in the Hydro mobbed, jumping about to something, and God, I hope something happens that we can do that again.
We will, because we have to. I mean, it's a little things as well. Like I said, we've got coming up for a 4-week-old baby in the house right now, and my mum and dad, it's their first grandchild. They're both in the 70s. They haven't held her yet.
I've got a new wee great nephew who I've not met yet, and he's 4 months old, 5 months old. And
it's the little things. It's these little things.
photographs, and he just looks like a wee belter, you know. He just looks, and I'm the Uncle Tom. I've always been the uncle you can swear in front of, and the old, you know. And I'm missing that early kind of bonding, you know, just laughing and singing and stuff that I had with his big brother. And I know that, you know, it's fine. I'll make an entrance into his life. I'll be Aunt Bet, you know, I'll turn up with £1 and a bag of broken Smarties. And it's that thing, that's the heartbreaking thing, is grandparents not getting that stuff. And people
we will get there.
Yeah, and people that are ill in hospital, and you know, my mother was in a care home for the last few years of her life, and I can't imagine what it would be like now if this was happening back then. It would have been absolutely terrible. Anyway, we're getting bogged down.
We're getting off. To get a little bit back onto the track, obviously, although we've kind of touched on this as well, fortunately, the channel's watched by people all over the world. Americans, Australians, Canadians, a lot of people in Europe, expats, or people with Scottish heritage that are wanting to come back or wanting to come for the first time. If they're going to come over, what sort of top tips would you give them if they want to come over to Scotland?
Okay, well, we have a thing called a midgie. Now, Scottish people don't really tell you about this, because it's like lots of tiny miniature flying Freddy Kruegers. And they're not like your normal mosquitoes. They're actually, see, I hadn't really experienced this until I went to a caravan up in Glenouig a few years ago. And I was like, these are like nuclear midges. You know, normally your midges are just midges, you know, but these midges were like, it was like, you know, there was a woman walking down the street, and the next time I looked around, she was a skeleton. You know, it was like banana midges. The midges, if you're coming late summer, just be aware that we have got a thing in Scotland which is like evil mosquitoes.
Yeah.
Really they're not going to do you any harm apart from annoy you and maybe bite you a little bit.
And you're going to itch like hell.
You're just going to have to wade through it. We do, Scotland, but we do keep quiet about it. It's not something we boast about, and maybe I'll get put in a big wicker man for telling you all, but...
it's a random thing that we just sort of, you're right though, we just sort of accept it. Like, they're annoying as heck, but we go, yeah.
We complain about it and we moan about it, but we don't really let it spoil our fun.
No.
We will happily sit round a bonfire, getting eaten alive, and kind of just accept it as one of the kind of hazards of being a Scot and having a, you know,
there was a field beside, close to where I grew up, and once every couple of years, it would, you know, the farmer would change it to hay. So he'd cut it down. There'd be big hay bales, and we'd always be in there. We'd always be making big piles of hay, and we'd always be jumping in them, and the midges would just devour us. You know what I mean? You'd go home and you would just be bitten to bits, getting the calamine lotion on them and everything like that. And then the next day, we're back in the field.
Back out there. It's like flying piranhas. It is. Piranha midges.
No.
But please don't let that put you off coming to Scotland, because we've got other fantastic things like square sausages and iron brew and good comedy and big-hearted people and beautiful scenery. But we do have midges.
Yeah. You're actually starting to go. I always like to finish up with what I call difficult questions for us Scots.
Okay.
So you kind of started to hit the nail on the head there. So first up, shortbread or tablet?
Oh.
You see, this is where it gets serious now, Tom.
It is serious. Now, my grandmother made the best shortbread in the universe. But tablet, have I got to choose one?
Well, I mean, if you can argue for two of them.
see if you buy a packet of tablet, yeah, right. But see if it's tablet that Sandra's made, you know, your Auntie Agnes has made. It's like crack cocaine. It really is. It's like, you know, it's really, really something special. So, do you know what, tablet?
Yeah. But I mean, I remember, and I've said this to many people when I've asked this question. My gran used to make brilliant tablet and shortbread. I didn't realise the work. She was a skinny wee thing, my mum's mum, but I didn't realise the work she must have been doing stirring that tablet because it's hard to do.
And they took it very seriously.
Oh God, yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Seriously. And there was competitive. There was don't nick Ina's tablet recipe.
Yeah.
And if somebody else got asked to make tablet over somebody else, there was a war. There was a tablet war.
Yeah. But nowadays, obviously, like I said, we've got a little one now. Neither my mum or my wife's mum know how to make shortbread or tablet, and we've been saying to them, you need to learn because she needs to have a gran who makes shortbread and tablet. It's tradition.
Well, my niece Jenny makes amazing old lady tablet. Proper Scottish old lady tablet, and she makes it every Christmas. So it's continued. Yeah, so tablet is my choice there.
Haggis, neeps and tatties or mince and tatties?
I'm a vegetarian. So
well, you can go veggie haggis, so you can get a good veggie haggis.
Veggie haggis is good. Yep. Before I was a vegetarian, I would have gone mince and tatties, but I did enjoy haggis if I didn't think about what it was.
No, that's fair. That's fair. My wife's veggie.
And when I'm not going to think about what this is, it was fine.
My wife's a veggie, and she loves a good veggie haggis. And I used to host a Scot. Again, I've said this a few times on the channel, but I used to host a Scottish show, on Queen Street in Edinburgh, just the Jam House. It used to be the old BBC building.
I've been in the Jam House a few times.
I used to host a Scottish show in there, and it was usually
have the bus run people.
Yeah.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah. There would be buses of American tourists and everything. They would all, the people on the bus would sell it. We've got a show for you tonight. Buy a ticket and you can go see the show. They'd come, but they'd get a full meal.
Yes.
They'd get a starter, they'd get a main course, and they'd get a dessert. But we'd always give them haggis as the starter, so that they wouldn't get it for a main course and go hungry if they didn't like it or didn't want to try it.
Yeah. But I mean, I do burn suppers every year, and I always get a veggie haggis. Which veggie haggis is beautiful. It's lentils, nice.
Yeah. Iron brew or whiskey?
Well, I don't drink, so and I don't drink anything fizzy, so I couldn't have any of that. But
that's a nice easy choice then.
It's a nice easy choice, but definitely iron brew. I mean, I've got iron brew in my blood. But I don't drink alcohol and I don't drink any carbonated, but I do still have fond memories of iron brew.
Deep fried Mars bar, yes or no?
No.
No, have you tried it?
No, I don't know anybody that's tried it. It's not. I think. See, when you go down to London or somewhere like that, that's the first thing they say. Deep fried. They think that we have deep fried Mars bars every day. It's a tourist thing.
I made it in the house a few months ago when we were in strict lockdown. I couldn't go. I made it to give it a go, and you know what? It's surprisingly okay.
Is it? I saw there's a chippy in Glasgow started doing deep fried pickled onions. Now they look good.
Yeah, I would try that.
Yeah,
I would try that.
But no, deep fried Mars bar. I didn't make the same fat as the fish.
Last but by no means least, Tunnocks tea cake or caramel wafer?
Neither.
No, not like either of them?
No, not into it. Not into it.
That's fair.
No. I don't know why. It just seemed like the kind of biscuits that were brought out when a posh visitor came.
Do you remember the sketch that Billy Connolly did where he was talking about
cream father? That's what they're there for.
But his dad used to get him to wrap the digestives in tinfoil so that when his auntie came round, she wouldn't eat the posh biscuits. She'd take the tinfoil off those ones and go,
brilliant. She wouldn't eat the yo-yos.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't thank you for a Tunnocks tea cake, but my friend Carol Lawler, who's a singer-songwriter, is obsessed with them. So I better not diss them because she'll be after me.
No, Alan Stewart said that when he's doing panto, he has to have one at the interval of every show.
Wow. I think I don't remember that about him.
He was saying when Andy was obviously when Andy got ill a couple of years ago and he was off, he missed a year of the panto. Andy sent him a massive box of tonic. He went, there you go, that'll keep you going. Massive big box of tonic tea. Tom, this has been absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing your time. I thank you so much.
That was great. I loved chatting to Tom. He was genuinely lovely. You know when sometimes you just chat to people and they properly make you laugh out loud. He was so funny, so genuine, so lovely. Tom, thank you for taking the time to chat to me today. It really, really means the world. I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you have, please remember to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and why don't you share these as well. But wherever you are, keep yourself safe out there. Till next time, bye humans.